Narcissists, they time things very carefully. And what I mean by that is, if they look at you and they see you as somebody who they know you won't last forever, you might not even last very long, but they think that you can last a certain amount of time with them, giving them good supply. Maybe it's a few months, perhaps even a couple of years. Narcissists, they don't ever want to let the person go. They don't ever really discard the person, and they try not to push the person away too soon if they think the person still has something to offer them. But even though they're not ready to push you away, they will devalue you. They will use and abuse you because that's how they get their narcissistic supply needs met. They get their narcissistic supply needs met by putting you down. And narcissists, they gauge people quite carefully. They try to understand what your limits are, and they only really interact with people who have a relatively high tolerance for their nonsense. In other words, you ignore a fair amount of red flags and kind of put up with it. And they like to see how much they can get away with when it comes to you. And they're always operating at your limit. Like they might know that, oh, if they do or say certain things, it might push you away for good. So they won't quite go that far, but they will regularly say things that put you down. They will regularly ask for favors that are not really reasonable, but they make you feel bad and guilt trip you for not cooperating. You know, they will regularly project their negativity upon you so they get relief from their own negative feelings. But if they're not ready to let you go for good yet, they try not to stretch beyond that marker in the sand, which they see to be your limit, which might be a step too far. And that's a dangerous game. I mean, it's a game that narcissists must play to get their needs met, but it means that they're always on thin ice with people. Because what often happens is, let's say you all of a sudden, you've kind of had enough, and your tolerance levels for their nonsense is not quite what it once was, and you're not willing to put up with the same level of abuse, the same level of condescension, belittlement, devaluation, and all that. Let's say that you're starting to come to your senses, and the narcissist isn't quite switched on to that change in you. That's where the narcissist, very obliviously, they'll oftentimes do or say something which is the last drop. You know, they push you too far, enough's enough, and then they push you away. And you realize you just can't handle it anymore, and you don't need to. You're gone, you're out. Narcissists oftentimes push people away in that manner, inadvertently, when they were not ready to let the person go yet, but they were just playing their normal game, and they underestimated your ability to just walk away. And when you do that, at first, the narcissist tends to think you're playing games. You know, they look at that, they're somewhat in disbelief that you've been pushed away by one thing they did. Obviously, it's the cumulative effect of everything they've done, but there's always going to be that last drop. There's always going to be that last straw that is the factor that makes the person leave. So the narcissist, in their mind, they're thinking, well, surely you're going to come back. Surely you're not going to manage to stay away. You know, and then the narcissist kind of, sometimes they'll get a bit pensive, and then their overconfidence, let's say, comforts them. Their denial kicks in. And then they like to think, okay, they'll play the waiting game. They'll wait for you to come back. But it's when they play the waiting game, it's when they're just waiting in denial for you to take a step towards them, and you don't take that step towards them. You don't actually make a move to try to work your way back in their life. And then they slowly start to get that funny feeling that, you know, hold on a second. You know, what if you are moving on? What if you might not come back? Well, that's where they start to panic. And that's where they start to wonder, did they take things too far? They start to wonder if they might actually be losing you for good. And there's a difficult acceptance process for the narcissist to really let those thoughts kick in without denying it or being cocky, thinking, no, you're going to come back, you're going to come back. Even though they try to comfort themselves in that kind of denial, that space of denial, the longer they're in there and the longer you haven't come back because of something they've done, the more they start to worry that actually maybe you're not playing games. Maybe this is just the new you. Maybe this is just you moving on. Maybe this is just the new world where you and the narcissist are no longer together. And that's where the narcissist starts to really, let the feeling starts to sink in quite heavily. And then they start to think, hold on a second. They're probably going to be forced to action. They might have to be forced to try and get you back. And it's not uncommon when narcissists, let's say they knew you and they also knew people close to you, maybe your family, etc. When the narcissist realizes that you're not coming back, that they've screwed up, it's not uncommon for them to try to get all your mutual acquaintances. It could even be people like your parents, your siblings, if you have any, other friends. It's not uncommon for the narcissist to try to befriend those people and become very friendly with them, to try to persuade those people that you're a good fit, that the narcissist is a good fit for you, as, a little bit of extra leverage to try to get you to be persuaded to go back to them. And then they'll apologize to you. They'll have very sincere, very heartfelt apologies. They might confess their love to you. They might see they've seen the light, that they've been in this confused space for some time, but now they've seen, who you are as a person who they appreciate, and that they really want things to work out this time. I mean, narcissists, they actually believe that. That's the thing. When they realize that they've lost you for good, and especially when it's their doing. It might be slightly different, say, if you cheated on them and then you just kind of fell in love with somebody else and left. It might be a little bit different. But when the narcissist does something to push you away and they realize you're not coming back, they come back at you at all angles. And it often does involve other people and, these fake apologies, which at the moment, that for the narcissist, the apologies feel quite sincere. They think they mean it because they do need you. They're quite desperate at that point. And it can be a very confusing, very, very dark time for the narcissist. But that doesn't mean you should go back, because once they have you again, all those confessions of love, that apologetic stance, all that goes away very quickly, and you start seeing them for who they are. So it's just that, when the narcissist pushes you away too early, when they're not ready to push you away yet, and then they realize it, for them, it's like they're throwing away a lottery ticket, only later to realize that that lottery ticket has the winning sequence, and they want to get it back at all costs. That's how they feel. And if you think about it, if you threw away a lottery ticket that had the winning sequence and there was a lot there for you, it's hard to just let it go. It can be nearly impossible just to let it go. Thanks for watching.